that canon is a rule of a standard, and the Scriptures lived up to a doctrinal standard, and they met that doctrinal standard, and that's why Christians recognise them as being inspired. And Christians can't live without Scripture. We should use Scripture. That's why it was written by the apostles, but the apostles and their students. But the Christian faith exists because of its doctrines, not because of its Scriptures. The Scriptures were created by the church and incorporated into the life of the church, and are now essential to the life of the church. But the church doesn't rest on the Scriptures.
But the thing is, so because of those many believers at the time who believed Jesus' resurrection, at the time there are people who not believed it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, there were people, but look at how they tried to deny the resurrection. So the priest hierarchies, when they heard about the resurrection, they paid the Roman soldiers to say that his followers had stolen the body. And so the counter narrative to the resurrection wasn't that Christ had not raised from the dead, here's his body, but rather the reason why you can't see the body is because his followers have stole the body, and that's why you can't see it. Now that's important. You said you were an atheist, right?
No. I believe God.
Oh, you're a
but
Christian.
I don't believe in religions.
Okay, so are you a Christian?
No, I don't. I can't say that.
So you're like a deist. You believe in a God, but you're not sure about which God to believe in.
Yeah, that's how
Okay,
it
you're like a
is.
seeker. Okay, fair enough, right? And so Christianity, in terms of the competing narratives against the resurrection, are actually a witness to the reality of the resurrection, because they are demonstrating that there was no body to produce. You know, that would have been the quickest way to kill off the claim, would it not? Was to produce the body. Yeah. But also, if you look at early Christian witness, early Christian activity, when a great teacher died, the Jewish thing to do would be to venerate their tomb. But Christians never did that. And they were all Jews, the first Christians. But why, like venerating the tomb of your great teacher is the equivalent of us when we go to the graveyard of someone and we lay down flowers. That's the cultural thing to do, to remember those that have died, right? But the first Jewish Christians didn't do that. They did something completely different. They proclaimed the idea that this one person had risen from the dead. Now, that also in itself was a non-Jewish thing to do. The Jews had a concept of the general resurrection, but the idea that just one person would have a resurrection ahead of everybody else, that is an un-Jewish idea. And so it begs the question why? Something needed to have happened to rupture the categories of their mind, their cultural norms, and shoot them off in a different trajectory. There was no Jewish reason to venerate a Sunday. And yet the first Jewish Christians started to venerate Sunday as the Lord's Day, is what they call it in the book of Acts. So again,
is that the early Christians make it the Sunday?
This is the first Jewish Christians. And this is really important, because the first Jewish Christians had no Jewish reason to do any of these things. And so for them to do these things, there must have been some kind of life-changing experience to shoot them off in a different trajectory, right? You know, the orbit of their world was the temple. The orbit of their world was the Mosaic law. But something caused that to disappear in their horizon, and they shot off in a new direction. Now, we know what that is, because all of us, put your hand up if you've had a life-changing experience that shot your life off in a different direction, right? Something happens to you and it makes you reconsider everything, live your life in a different way. So the question that I would put to you and to anyone else who's thinking about this seriously is, what happened to those first Jewish Christians to make them shoot off in a different trajectory?
But the thing is, like, if you're gonna say it that way, because of a life-changing event happened. Nowadays, there are some people who believe,
Yeah.
there are some people who lived this era
Yeah.
to be some of sort of God's, what you call, reconnaissance.
Like in India, where they
India,
have
yeah,
living
yeah.
gods.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
like Sai Baba or something.
Sai Baba, yeah.
He was a man, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there is something happened. So still people believe he's a god.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah,
either
they
they
believe.
will-
Go on, finish. Yeah.
So, yeah. So because of something happened, people start believing it.
Yeah.
That something changed. So it can be something right.
Yep.
So that thing happens now, and it for a different person, but we say it's not right.
Yeah.
So do you see the comparison? So we can say, okay, this is also happening. So that something has changed. So this might be right if they're gonna say that way. So this also gonna be right. Both gonna be right then.
Yeah. So the thing is, Sai Baba died and stayed dead. All the living gods of the Hindus die and stay dead. You know, the guy that they've thrown in prison recently, the most recent big god man in India, who had a massive following.
Nitya.
Like, I forget his name, but he might have come out of prison by now. But he was sentenced to prison for defrauding people. He's gonna die if he's not dead already, and he'll stay dead. Coming back to the question that I've put to you and you haven't addressed,
Sorry.
is what caused those first Jewish Christians to shoot their life off in a different trajectory? Now they actually tell you. You know, it's not a mystery. They say it's because they encountered the risen Jesus. Now, if you're going to explain why their life goes off in a different direction, you've got to not only explain all the evidences that we see that their life took a different direction, but you've also got to explain the experience that they had as well. Because they actually give you the answer to the question opposed. So I would ask you, what would cause you to believe that someone you knew had died is back alive again?
For me, if to
Yeah, what would
believe-
convince you?
Yeah,
Convince you.
I might have seen it.
Right. Do you think people in the past were any different?
No.
No.
The same thing. Yeah.
Right, so they saw something, didn't they? Logic tells us that the only way that they could be so convinced that Jesus rose from the dead is that they saw something. Right? And this isn't just a one-off experience. It was multiple experiences at multiple times. We see that in the early creed in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 3 and onwards, where it talks about, you know, that the Christ appeared to Peter and then to John, James, then to all the apostles, and then to 500, and now lastly, as one untimely born, to me, Paul. And so you've got this tradition that talks about multiple resurrection appearances to multiple different people. That has to be explained. What do you think could convince a bunch of people at independent and different encounters that they'd seen the same person who they believed dead was now alive?
Fair. But don't you think...
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. But that's a fair logic
Yeah.
statement. I'm saying, but don't you think when some followers truly believe and follow a person, they're not gonna say something like, extremely amazing about those people, that person. If I'm following you,
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
So you're not here tomorrow and day.
Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow if I come here, I'm gonna say Bob was amazing person. He was like throwing words like nothing, and everybody was flying away and all.
Yeah.
Can I say that one? And people can believe
Exaggeration.
it. Yeah, exaggerating.
Right.
Yeah. So I can do that because nobody here has seen it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you then go on? Would you then go on to state that I had risen from the dead?
Come again?
Would you then go on to say that I've risen from the dead?
I know.
Right. Why not? Because human
Yeah.
beings understand death to be final.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason why you would go out and teach that death is not the final end and that people would believe in the resurrection is because you either believe in authority like the prophets that taught a general resurrection, and hidden within the prophets was the idea of a unique resurrection that couldn't be seen by people until Christ actually rose from the dead. And it's almost like his rising from the dead highlights entire passages of the Bible in a new way. you know, and thus we see that he's fulfilling prophecy in a unique way. But the point that I'm saying to you is that for them the resurrection has to come first before the new interpretation of the scripture.
Fair.
Again, it's a non-Jewish thing to do, and you've got to explain why their understanding of their own religion takes on a new form, a new reason, a new way of thinking about it.
But
And I want to ask you, what do you think caused it?
for the what?
Everything that I've just said.
It's the resurrection.
So if
Because
you
as a
are you saying you believe the resurrection happened?
Yeah, I believe.
So why aren't you a Christian?
No. I believe. Let me tell you, if I given a chance of choosing a God, which is now a world is saying this God, that God, I choose to believe Jesus Christ because of the way he lived.
Right.
Okay, that is something I appreciate as a God. If he came into the world
Yeah.
and died for us, that is something no any other gods can be, no any God have done according to the world at the moment. So I appreciate it. But to be certain about it, because you know what I'm saying, if Jesus is the God for us to follow, but there are questions which is, you know, nowadays we, as I said, the exaggeration about the things and all, it can happen.
Can I ask you, who's Jesus to you?
He's a great person.
But not God.
He can be a God. That's what I'm saying. He can be a
So
God.
he's a great person who can be a God, but he's not God to you.
Not yet.
But you believe that he rose from the dead.
I intend to believe it.
You intend to believe it.
Yeah.
So what's stopping you from committing to that belief? Why did you say you don't believe in religion?
Because Christianity at the moment is not only Jesus. It has to be whole Bible, which is talking about the God from the beginning till Jesus' death and resurrection.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Yes.
Yeah. So the God which is taught in the all Gospels,
Old Testament.
Old Testament,
Yeah.
and the New Testament.
Yeah.
There's a different between those two.
Yeah.
Like you know,
You think there is?
I don't say. I think I have idea of
Reasons.
it, reasons
Yeah.
to believe
Yeah.
there is difference.
Yeah.
So the way the God being giving some rules and regulation on the very beginning,
Yeah.
and then he come to say in a different way of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sound different.
Okay,
There's
so
a-
let me try to say let me try to explain that the God of the Old Testament is not different from the God of the New Testament. The God of the Old Testament is a God of faithful, loving covenant. The God of the New Testament is a God of faithful, loving covenant. The only reason why we would call that into question is because we're not identifying with Israel. If you identify with Israel and you read the Old Testament, what you see is a God that sticks with his people through thick and thin. Sticks with his people when his people don't stick with him. That is merciful to his people time and time and time again. But he is a God that's working with a people who were savages when he took them out of Egypt because they'd been kept as slaves for 400 years. They were ignorant, brutish savages in an ignorant, brutish and savage world. And he worked with those people amidst a brutish and savage world. And the way that he demonstrates his faithfulness sometimes looks like brutish savageness to us in our time. But the only reason why it looks like brutish savageness in our time is precisely because of Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
Go on.
Is it about you're talking the way he interact or the things he did to the Israelites you're talking about?
I'm talking about how God treated Israel and how God treated the neighbors of Israel.
No, I'm not talking about that.
Well, you're talking about laws.
Yeah, laws.
Okay,
some of the laws, you know, about the slaves.
But
I
that's
don't
also
know-
included in what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the
But
thing-
no, that's also included in what I'm saying, because if you take a bunch of uneducated savages, right, and then you release them into the world, without any guidance or support, they're going to end up destroying themselves. Even with the God-given law of Moses, they still managed to destroy themselves, because part of the reason why God gave the law was to show to mankind through Israel that sin is working in our flesh. That even with God's laws, we'll still sin. And that sin is what separates us from God, like it separated Israel from God time and time again. And that's why we need to turn to God in repentance and to seek His salvation. Does that make sense?
Fair enough. But the thing is, well, like, I'm I have read the Bible a little bit in my language. My brother, who asked me this question from the Bible, he said, there's a law says about slaving the daughter of yours.
Yeah.
I hope it's in the
There are laws about slavery in the Old Testament. I don't know which one you're referring to, but yeah,
so
go on.
if like you can slave your daughter,
Yeah.
something like that. I hope that slaving your daughter itself is something wrong for me.
Yeah, I mean,
wrong for me. It's a law. Sorry.
Go on. Yeah.
So is the law is given by the God or it's given by Moses?
It's given by God.
So if he is saying slave your daughter for any reasons, you can give it as a slave.
So it sounds to me like you're describing indentured servitude. In a world without banks, right? When you owe me money and you can't get a loan to pay me, right? And interestingly, banks were the creation of a Christian world, right? Precisely because we set our economy against a slave economy. Christians created an economy that isn't based upon slavery, and that's why we're having this discussion. So the very God that I'm inviting you to worship is the very God that got rid of slavery. Slavery is a result of man's sin. In Gregory of Nysa's sermons, he condemns slavery as man rising above his own position and having authority over man, because in Genesis, man is given dominion over the creatures of the field and over the world, but man isn't given dominion over man. And the Christian faith is about returning to that state. But when we fast forward from Adam and Eve's time to Moses' time, the world had already fallen into sin. And because it had fallen into sin, sin had corrupted everything about our society, including the way we do economy. Slavery was the way in which people did economy at that time, right? If I said to you today, right, I want you to go out and live, but don't use money, would you be able to do it?
At this time?
Yeah.
I might not do it.
Exactly. So if God had said to the Israelites, go out and live, but live without slaves, they wouldn't, in their dumb minds, because remember, they'd just been enslaved for 400 years. They wouldn't have been able to conceive of a world without slavery, right? So God's working within the sinfulness of man, and his laws are leading them away from that life. So the laws are good because they're leading people away from sin. Thank you so much. They're demonstrating the reality of sin. When Jesus comes, in Isaiah it prophesies that when the Messiah comes, he will come to set the captives free.
He's already come, mate.
When Jesus comes, he says, I've come to set the captives free. The captives, yeah, unfortunately you get these trolls. You just have to do your best to ignore them. Yeah. So in terms of Jesus's work, he's the one that lays the foundation that leads to the destruction of the slave trade. That's the same God that led Israel out of slavery, remember? He started the whole journey by liberating people from slavery. Does that make sense?
The slavery of our sin, Bob.
Just ignore him, keep going.
But the thing is, because Jesus came and take it away.
Yes.
And like the Yahweh at the time.
Yes.
It took it from there. So already they have an idea of slavery is already bad, right?
Yeah.
So
Slavery
I
bad.
might sound very bad.
No, it's good.
Keep going.
Sorry. So it's already, we know it's bad. They know already because they have slavery. Like if I came and punch you,
Yeah.
you know it's hurts, and
Yeah.
you don't want to punch anybody else because it hurts,
Yes.
right? So now you've been a slave,
Yes.
okay, and I take you out from slavery,
Yes.
and I'm telling you, if you don't have money,
Yes.
you can slave your daughter.
Yes.
You can slave your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the lifetime.
Yeah.
Or a certain period of time, you can slave your
Up,
daughter.
up until the year of Jubilee.
Yeah, something like that. I'm just telling you, like, you know,
Yeah.
as an example. So
All
I'm
debts are
telling
forgiven
you,
at the
yeah.
year of Jubilee.
Okay, so I'm telling that to you. So it doesn't like say because he took away, he gave that law. It is right.
Yeah, what I'm saying to you is that what makes a law right, is that a law can be right because it mitigates an evil, right?
I don't understand.
So, for instance, we have a law that makes assisted suicide illegal, but it doesn't stop people from committing suicide. It doesn't stop people from doing an evil thing. But what it does is it leads people away from an evil. Now, when God took the people out of Israel, then that's the first point, is that it's a paradigm of liberation from slavery, right? It sets up what Christ does when he says, I've come to set the captives free. And the thing, what's your name, bro?
I'm Romil.
Romil, the thing is, Romil, I'm not asking you to follow Mosaic law. I'm asking you to follow Jesus. So if you're impressed by Jesus, if you think Jesus is God, that he rose from the dead, I'm inviting you to be his disciple, and means like you joining a tradition of 2,000 years of Christians fighting against the slave trade. The fact that God worked within a slave economy was because the people he was working with couldn't think of anything else. They couldn't conceive of a world without slavery. It took time before they could, and it took education, and that education came from studying the Mosaic law. And by studying the Mosaic law, they then became ready to receive the message of Jesus, which abolishes the idea of slavery altogether. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I want to be on a group.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
In a way, like if we're gonna see in a religious perspective, it does. A person who doesn't believe religion, so we like as me,
Yeah.
I'm trying to reason with.
Dialogue's always better.
Let's say you are the person who I'm going to follow, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you said something yesterday, and tomorrow you're saying in a different way.
Well, let me put
It doesn't make.
I get
you
what you're saying. Let me give you a counter argument. When you teach someone mathematics or physics, but when you teach someone maths or physics, as you progress through the study of mathematics and physics, increasingly your explanation becomes more detailed and more accurate. To that there is a point where what you learn in high school is contradicted by what you learn at university, because we recognize that high school students can't get the deeper maths of what you learn at university. Well, I'm saying to you that moral education is the same.
But with the mathematics, let me tell you something. So with the mathematics, yeah. Today you are saying.
Right, so we're going to move over there while you two have a conversation. You want to have a conversation with him, you stay here and talk to him. I'm now going to move over there. Come with me. You talk to him now.
That's fair.
All right, go on.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, so today you are telling me 1 and 3 can be 10, okay?
No, I'm not
But-
saying that.
No, I'm saying, so today you are teaching me 1 and 3 can be 10.
Yeah.
Later on we can change it to 1 and 3 is 4.
Yeah.
right?
Right. No,
But
that's not what I'm doing, but go on.
so- yeah, but if I say
I get your
so,
argument. You're
yeah.
saying that it's contradictory. What I'm saying is a progression. Because when you look at Jewish law and you compare it to the slavery known by the Egyptians, right? The slavery that was known by the Egyptians was unending slavery. The slavery, and that was ended. And that's really important that you take that on board, is that God starts the whole story of Israel with a liberation from slavery. That's
Amen.
important, Rommel.
But
Because
don't we had the slavery
Amen,
like
yeah.
even from Abraham,
does talk
because
something.
he had slaves.
yes, but
Yeah,
God didn't institute that. You're talking about the Mosaic law.
Mosaic, but-
So let's stick with Mosaic
okay,
law,
sorry.
because the slavery that Abraham participated in was the very cultural slavery that I'm describing to you. So it was so pervasive. It's like banks and the credit system and money, the fiat system today is all pervasive. And so because it's all pervasive, if God gave you a revelation right now that said, live without money, you'd starve within a year. You'd be homeless within a year, right? The people that God is speaking to, right? I can't stress to you how conditioned they were by their 400 years of slavery. If God had said to them, live without indentured slavery, set the captives free, they wouldn't have been able to comprehend how such a society works. And would it be cruel to ask someone to live in a way, would it be cruel to ask someone to live in a way that they can't?
Yes, we can't.
Right. But if you understood that where they were was not where they should be, would it be good to work with where they are if your intention is to lead them out of it? Right. And that is the whole story. And that's the bit, that's water, thank God. No, it's probably be me that gets shat on by pigeons. I've got a good hit rate with them. Like, so the point is, but that's the whole story. You want to slice it in two and set the two sides in opposition. What I'm saying to you is that there's one story, and it is the story of God leading Israel out of an obsession, out of sin, and that includes the sin of slavery,
But when we talk logical, yeah,
which we are.
which I hope I'm also sound logical for you.
You do, yeah.
So, but the thing is, when Moses gave the
Right, I'm going to move away now because you've started a conversation with him. You stay here and talk to him, and we will now move. If you would like to
I'm stopping
listen,
the conversation.
if you
I'm
would
listening,
like
Bobo.
to listen
I'm
to this
listening, Bobo.
debate,
Yeah.
please stop talking to him.
Okay, I'll agree to that, Bobo.
All right,
I'll agree.
please stop talking to him.
Okay.
Right, come with me, Rommel.
No, I'm not gonna.
It is harassment.
Sorry about that, Rommel.
Speaker's corner. I'm allowed to listen to this.
It's still got
Yeah.
laws and regulations, my friend.
Bro,
Yeah,
just,
Lord.
It's
It's a
bro,
civil-
you're not helping.
I've given this
You're
dude
not
my
helping.
word, I'll listen.
You're not helping.
If he
Go on.
talks any
You were
crap,
saying.
I'll interject.
You've just got to ignore him, bro. Carry on.
Yeah,
so
yeah, well.
the thing is, when the Mosaic law was given,
Yeah.
it's at the time of the 40 years of from Egypt to Canaan,
Yeah.
right? So at the time, who were they as slavery? Who was they taking as a slave? Their own people.
Yes. Because as I've explained, if I said to you, God has given me a revelation, live without fiat currency, live without credit, live without banks, could you conceive how you could do that?
Yeah, I can't. But the thing is,
But that's
yeah,
the
sorry.
point.
Yeah.
If someone, that's the point. There's no point God giving someone a revelation that they don't have a space to receive. What you need to do is to do the existential work, the excavation of the soul, the excavation of the culture. You've got to redefine the boundaries so that you can give new learning. And that's the whole message of the Christian faith.
Do you understand
It's not like
fiat currency?
ignore him.
Do you understand
Don't
fiat
engage
currency
with him.
is
Just
the
ignore him.
term?
Don't. If you
yeah.
engage with him, I'll stop talking to you.
I'll talk to you.
Fiat
Right.
currency.
Yeah. So the point is, yeah. Don't engage him because I won't talk to you. So the point is, as you keep trying to slice this story in two, and what I'm trying to say is that there's one story here. The Mosaic law points to Jesus, right? And it's an arrow that points to Jesus. And when you get to Jesus, Jesus says, set the captives free. release the captives. And so the whole point of the Mosaic law, because it points to Jesus who sets the captives free, who ends slavery, the whole point of the Mosaic law is to end slavery itself.
Okay.
Do you know about the 12-step program for alcoholics?
No.
Right, so the 12-step program is a program that emerged out of the monastic community. It's helped tens of thousands of people around the world be free of addictions, right? The point is, it is meant to take people on a journey that leads them out of their slavery to their addiction. But the point of the 12-step program is we don't expect you to get there on day one.
No.
It's a program, and so the point of the Mosaic law is to point towards Jesus, and Jesus is the end of the journey, right? So I'm not inviting you to embrace Mosaic law or inviting you to believe in a God that contradicts himself. I'm inviting you to believe in a God who from Moses' time pointed towards Jesus, with the point being that Jesus would set us free.
Yeah. But it's still, that is, like, if I'm just gonna follow Jesus' teaching and all, it's just gonna follow.
That's
him
what
as
I'm
a-
asking you to
yeah,
do.
if we're gonna do that, it won't be like, let's say, if as a person, if I'm gonna follow only Sai Baba, okay, but he says very amazing or whatever, I gonna ignore whatever he done in his past. Let's say he was a rapist or he was a murderer or one thing, and now he say, I'm a good person, you live your life like a holy person, I give you so much of good things about the life and all. If I gonna follow him, we're gonna ignore what has happened on the past,
Yeah.
or what he was past. Won't be like, it's not, I don't think it's right in a way if
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
Let me ask you this question. There was a civil war in Sri Lanka, right?
Yeah.
Right. Which side of that civil war were you on?
What do you mean by this? I'm a Tamilian.
Right. So that was the losing side, right?
Yeah, losing side.
Right. Were you happy about that loss?
No, I was not happy about
If the Tamil Tigers had won, right, would you say that their victory meant that the actions that were resultant of that victory, like the killing of the opposition, was justified?
Come again with the question. I didn't.
And I don't want to put. Are you going back to Sri Lanka?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm still living there.
Okay, I reckon I don't know about the laws in Sri Lanka, so I don't want to ask you a question that will get you in any trouble with the authorities there.
I just want, if
But-
I
but-
can't answer,
but-
I will say I don't know.
Okay, if you can't answer, you don't answer. But if you support the idea of the Tamil Tigers and the
They're
fight
gone
for
now.
independence,
They're gone.
would would their actions be justified by their cause?
No, the thing is,
So you would say that there was no way for the Tamil Tigers, so the Tamil Tigers couldn't defend the Tamil people, they couldn't fight for the cause of the Tamil people.
no, the thing is, the course that they started was right.
Right.
But the thing is, what they went with it, that's where leads this downfall.
Yeah, but my
Yeah.
point is,
Will it
had they
justify?
succeeded, so imagine a world in which the Tamil Tigers won, would you be celebrating that victory?
No.
You wouldn't?
I wouldn't celebrate in it.
That's leading a
Maybe
question.
maybe
leading him into
you
danger
can't tell
there.
the truth, but I think if you support the idea of the Tamil people, then maybe you would celebrate
No,
that victory.
because the way the place I lived is a different idea.
Hmm.
It's not about having a singular place for us. It's
Let
about
me
the-
use
that's why
another
it's a
example.
different
Let me
place.
use another example. The fight against the Nazis
Like you.
meant that we had to do terrible things, right? Which resulted in civilian deaths. Those civilian deaths were tragic. But the fight against the Nazis meant that those terrible things, in the bigger scope, were the lesser of two evils, right? And the thing is, within the real world, you often operate in worlds where there's lesser of two evils. And that includes when God is working with men, because men live in that world. And so God takes people on a path of the lesser of two evils to get them to see the horizon where there's a completely different way to live. And that's what happens with Moses to Jesus, is that God takes Israel on a journey where they start off as savage brutes, and they end up being the people that receive the Messiah, or some of them do, right? And laying the foundations of the church, which then goes on to fight against slavery, and still fights against, for instance, the Islamic slavery today, because you can still buy slaves across the Islamic world. And Christians go into that trying to fight against that slavery. Now the question is, do you want to get, like, now your argument is like, well, you know, God did these things in the past. But what I'm saying is God did these things in the past because the people that he's working with couldn't have done otherwise.
But if he could able to say not to kill in his 10 commandments.
He said, it doesn't say don't kill, it says don't murder.
Yeah, I thought it was the same. My English is bad.
It's all right.
Yeah, so it's don't murder, yeah?
Yeah.
So when he can say strongly not to do something,
Yes.
because which is they was like even with the fight or
Yep,
anything,
yep.
still they could able to do that because they're living a savage
Yeah.
life. They was like used to kill, let's say they
Yep.
hunt or kill or
Yep.
everything, the murder people, like this much. Then he certainly he could able to say murder is wrong.
And that's why he introduced the Jubilee year and the idea of the cancellation of debt and the fact that indentured slaves should be set free. So he is conditioning the Jews to understand a world without slavery. But he's working within a world in which they find that hard to imagine.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he could able to say stop, like it has this is if you break this commandment, it is like
And
death.
Israel wouldn't have been able to function as a
Function
nation.
at all.
It wouldn't have
Like-
been able to function at all. The whole of Israeli society would have collapsed because there would have been no economy.
Yeah, but the thing is
No, there would have been no economy. The whole of the civilization would have collapsed there and then.
yes, but the thing is, like I can say, you have a slave. Now you don't have enough money. You can trade that slave, right? But you're telling me, Bob, you don't have enough money. You can give your daughter as a slave, which she is a free girl. Now you're making a slave. You're not slaving. You're not trading a slave to a slave. Like to.
I mean,
to
you've
put
not
it
you've
there.
not actually read the passage, but so I'm guessing that you're talking about indentured slavery. But the point is, and we're getting to the point now, Rommel, where we're just repeating
Yeah,
ourselves,
fair enough.
because the point is, the economy of Israel depended upon the economy of the time. The only way that people understood economy at that time was the use of slaves. The only way that they understood the idea of paying off debts when they didn't have access to fiat currency, when they didn't have access to credit, all of things that were created from a Christian worldview that hacked out another path because of Jesus, the one I'm actually asking you to follow, right? Because I'm not asking you to start following Mosaic law, I'm asking you to follow Jesus. But that whole system didn't exist at Moses' time. But the point of Moses is that it points towards Jesus. And so you've got to understand the Old Testament and the New Testament as a whole, in the sense that one is leading us to the other, and it's the end point that God is concerned about. It's where we end up that God is concerned about, right? You're worrying about the process, the journey. And what you're saying is that the journey was horrible. But the point is, some journeys are horrible to get to good places.
Yeah, but my point is not the journey.
Well, it is.
I guess my point is the person.
Yes,
Yeah,
I've
because-
already. So
yeah.
again, if a doctor, for instance, has to cut away, to say you've got cancer, and to save your life from that cancer, he has to disfigure you and scar you for life and maim you to save your life. Has that doctor done a good thing or a bad thing? Right, but the results have some bad effects, right? Right, so God is working in the real world, not some fantastical fictional world. And so because he's working in the real world and not some fantastical fictional world, God is operating in a way that because of Jesus, we are now able to say, well, that wasn't great, was it? But you wouldn't be able to say that if it wasn't for Jesus. It's Jesus that taught us that that was a bad thing to do. or rather that isn't the best way to live. Not that it was a bad thing to do. So, and so the point is, that's the person. He's the surgeon who's leading people to Jesus, which is the cure.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Rommel, it was lovely. Have you got a Bible, Rommel?
I have read the Bible.
Have you got one?
Now?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Have you got one back in
Yes, sir.
Sri Lanka?
Even in Qatar, I have it.
Right. Okay. I'd like
Yeah.
to give you a gift then.
So I have to ask you a
Yeah, go on.
different question. It's about you. Whenever
I'm not
you-
interested in answering questions about me, but go on. You can
No,
ask.
no. It's about when you say things in the here, yeah.
Yeah.
When you try to say, let's say, about Jesus Christ, whatever he says, and something comes from the Old Testament, whenever you try to say Jesus said, and you stop and you say God said it.
Yeah. So
It's
what's
no,
your
I'm
point?
asking, why you do that?
I'm sorry. I didn't get it.
Okay, like let's say what Jesus. Okay, let's talk about Jesus says.
Are you talking about when I identify Jesus as God in the Old Testament?
Yeah,
Yeah, because in the Old Testament, the one who speaks to Israel is Jesus. It is Jesus in the Old
but you
Testament.
don't. Whenever, even in the morning, like when you start saying, you say some quote from the Old Testament, you try to say Jesus, and you stop yourself and you
Yeah.
say God.
Because he's not properly known as Jesus until the New Testament and the Incarnation. And so he would be properly identified as either the angel of the Lord, or as the word of the Lord, or as merely God
But it would
in
be
the
a-
Old Testament.
It would be wrong if you said Jesus said.
It wouldn't be
or you
accurate, because the word of the Lord did not become known as Jesus until the New Testament. And so it's appropriate, it's just a custom. It's a custom to refer to Jesus, which is as Jesus from the New Testament times forwards. But when we're talking about Old Testament times, to refer him to by his Old Testament titles, which is the word of the Lord, the angel of the Lord, or just God.
Hey, yeah, understand.
Yeah?
Understand.
All right.
And
It's lovely
hope
to
I
speak
was
to you,
not
Rommel.
So if you're going to use
This
fiat
is
currency-
a gift for you, and
fiat
yeah,
currency
I
got
hope
to do-
you. I hope if you got my
What's
card,
fiat
haven't you?
currency
Yeah,
got
I
to
have
do with
got it.
Christianity?
Feel
Bob?
free to get in touch with me if you want to keep this conversation going over a Zoom call.
A Zoom call. I like
more
your
than
Zoom
me,
calls,
my
they're quite
brother
good.
would be more
What's a
interested
fiat
to talk to
currency,
you.
Bob?
Oh, how long are you
What
here
is
for?
a fiat currency? Come on.
How long are you
use
here
the term.
for?
I'm
You
going
use the
tomorrow.
term. Tell me
Right,
what
well, get in
fiat
touch with me
currency
via
is.
my
Yeah.
website on
Yeah,
the
that's
Tell me
only-
card.
what fiat
I will
currency
ask
is,
And
them
then-
to talk to you
Bob,
also if you're
And
okay
then,
with
yeah,
that.
absolutely,
You're
and
not
then
deaf.
we'll
What's a
and
fiat
then we'll
currency? You've
we'll
used the
talk
term.
through Zoom.
You've used
No
the term
problem.
and you've
If I
said
have
it's
time because my
Christian.
shift schedule is
Yeah.
to allow
What's a
us to
fiat
rest.
currency, Bob?
There you go.
With that disaster, but
All
I will
right.
try to
What's
talk
a
to
fiat?
you. Yeah?
Lovely
What's a
to
fiat
speak to you,
currency,
Rommel.
Bob?
Nice
That's a
talking
simple
to you.
Nice
question.
talking
I'm
to you
giving
as well.
The opportunity. What is a fiat currency, Bob?
JC, do you want to
What's
collect
a-
the
what's a
microphones?
fiat currency, Bob? Bob, what's a
Sir,
fiat
excuse
currency?
me, brother.
What is a fiat currency?
The mic.
Really simple question. It's a really simple question. Have you suddenly gone deaf, Bob?
Any final thoughts on that conversation?
What is a fiat
Final
currency?
thoughts.
Yeah, I do have some final thoughts
What's a fiat
So
currency?
yeah, hold the mic, please.
Yeah.
What a fiat
Right.
currency
Mom was
is.
going to blow. Right, go ahead.
I don't think you know what a
Final
fiat
thoughts
currency is.
on the conversation.
I don't
Rommel's
think you
a
know
lovely
I don't
chap.
think you know what a fiat currency is.
Final thoughts on the conversation. Get the right microphone, JC.
Fiat currency is.
Rommel
It's not
was a
car,
really
Bob.
lovely chap,
It's not a car.
and
it's an expression.
I want to encourage him to
Come
keep
on,
asking
you get
questions,
your
to keep
ignorance
growing,
out here, Bob. You don't
and
know what a
to
fiat
get in
currency
touch with me
is.
and to talk further. Keep him in your
You
prayers.
do not know what a
I
fiat
suspect he might
currency
be
is.
from a Christian background and maybe a
Bob,
lapsed
Bob,
Christian in some way.
bullshit on this part.
So,
Bob,
and as you can see, guys, if people don't block out this, like
just ask you a
this
simple
this
question.
troll,
Fiat
I just
currency.
stop.
You used the term, I didn't.
Thank you both.
God bless.